The Major, confirm. You're about to drop on my position. Her headset crackled with Chief Dale's voice, rough and too calm for how bad this was. The feed from the MQ-9's flyer showed a white-hot building pulsing on her screen, shapes moving inside, a thin line of trucks idling at the alley mouth. Negative, Chief. Target is the convoy, Maji Elena Markova said, fingers digging into the edge of the console. Get your team clear of the school. It is the school, ma'am, Dale shot back. They wired it. We found the drums. If the trucks roll, the whole district goes up. We're out of time. A second voice cut in, hoarse and panicked. Nova, this is Havoc 2. We are still inside. We have hostages, kids. You drop, they die. You don't, the trucks roll. Say again. What is your call? The operations center fell quiet except for the whine of cooling fans and the distant thump of artillery from another sector. The wall clock ticked past 2152Z. Heyer's voice broke in, clipped, icy. ROE update. Imminent mass casualty threat. You are authorized full strike if PID stands. Decision at your level, Major. Elena's throat was dry. The cursor hovered over the confirmation field. Cleared hot. Markova, Dale said, softer now. If you hesitate, we lose everything. Hit it. On the video, one of the trucks started to move. She exhaled once, almost a whisper. Copy all. Final decision. 36 hours earlier, Al-Sara Joint Operations Base, JOC 10 Sakirzuan, UTC Plar 3. The JOC was colder than she remembered. Maja Elena Markova stood just inside the doorway for a heartbeat, letting her eyes adjust from the desert glare to the wash of screens and fluorescents. The air smelled like dust, burned coffee, and the faint tang of electrical ozone from racks of servers humming against one wall. On the central map, the city sprawled in muted colors. Districts, routes, no strike zones. A white box outlined the market, untouchable by current ROE unless someone did something unmistakably hostile. She knew every street name by heart. Until now, she'd known them from thousands of miles away. Can we help you, ma'am? A young Air Force captain at the comms console asked, halfway between polite and wary. I'm looking for the task force ops brief, Elena said. 1000? That's us. He hesitated. Ops lead isn't here yet. She almost smiled. We'll see. Around the horseshoe of tables, operators from 3 services traded low conversation. Navy camis, Army muted patches, the occasional flight suit. Laptops open, notepads filled with block letters and crude doodles of target buildings. Near the center, a cluster of SEALs lounged like they owned the place, one older than the rest. Posture loose, but eyes tracking everything. Chief Petty Officer, by the insignia. That would be Dale. He didn't even glance at her. Elena moved to the front, dropping a thick folder beside the main laptop. Someone's pen stopped tapping. Conversations tapered off, leaving the steady murmur of radios and the faint whine of the projector fan. Excuse me, ma'am, a SEAL lieutenant said from his seat. Ops is about to start. Staff seating's back there. He gestured toward the side benches, where analysts usually sat. I'm aware, she replied. She reached up, grabbed the remote, and woke the projector with a click. The city map jumped from the wall screen to life, layered with ISR tracks. Let's get started. The lieutenant frowned, then glanced toward Dale. The chief's gaze finally lifted to her, slow and assessing. Before he could say anything, the side door opened. The task force commander, a full-bird colonel, strode in. All right, listen up, he said, shrugging off his cover. We've had a change in structure after last week's hit. You lost good people. We're not repeating that. Every head turned his way. Elena stepped back half a pace, letting him take the room. She could feel eyes on her, curious, dismissive, indifferent. The colonel nodded toward the map. You'll get your detailed mission brief in a moment. First, introductions. You all know me. What you don't know is that from today forward, all operations for this task force run through a single point. He looked at her. Majenya Markova, front and center. She was already there, but the phrasing mattered. She felt the brief tightening of shoulders around the room. Slowly, she peeled off her plain desert jacket, revealing rank on her shoulders, name tape crisp against her uniform. Maj, Elena Markova, the colonel said. New task force operations commander. She's been building the picture you've been fighting inside for the last 6 months. Silence settled, heavier than the air conditioning. Someone shifted in a chair. A coffee cup clicked against plastic. Dale's eyes narrowed, his gaze flicking from her rank to her face and back again, recalculating. Elena let the pause hang just long enough to sting, then keyed the slide to the next image. Last week's blast site, satellite view. We'll start, she said, voice steady, with why some of your friends are not in this room. ROE constraints, threat grids, past failures, all of it weighted behind the next keystroke. The room might not accept her yet, but they were already inside her war. They didn't give her long to enjoy the silence. Fine, the colonel said after the introduction. Maj Markova has the floor. Listen to her like you'd listen to me. He stepped back. The transfer of gravity was almost physical. Elena took a breath, thumbed the laptop trackpad, and brought up a new slide. A satellite image of a walled compound on the city's western edge. Night vision stills overlaid the roofline. This is Objective Merlin, she said. Probable. Bed-down site for the bomb maker's courier network. Tonight, Oro 11030 local, main element inserts by 2 MH-60M Blackhawks here and here. She tapped 2 landing zones on the map. Overwatch from a single MQ-9 already in orbit. A murmur ran through the room. Someone scribbled. Someone else leaned forward. From the SEAL cluster, a voice cut across her words. Still waiting on ops, Chief Dale said. Where's the actual plan coming from? Intel's not supposed to run assault for us, kid. The word landed harder than he knew. A couple of younger operators smirked into their cups. Elena let her gaze settle on him, just long enough to make it clear she'd heard every syllable. This is the plan, she answered. And for the record, Chief, Intel's been keeping you alive on this target for months. Yeah, from a continent away. He leaned back, arms crossing over his chest. No offense, ma'am, but putting a new face in the chair doesn't change the ground truth. My guys are the ones going through that door. I need someone decisive back here, not somebody gaming spreadsheets. The colonel's head turned. Chief. Warning in one word. Elena raised a hand a fraction, stopping him. If the colonel shut Dale down, the resentment would just go underground. She needed it in the open where she could see it. Your concerns noted, she said. Let's talk about decisiveness. ROE for tonight. We require PID on the high-value target. If non-combatants are present in the primary structure, you abort. No exceptions. That's not my opinion. That's written. Dale snorted. So we pull off because some cousin's sleeping on a mattress in the wrong room while this guy walks out the back door. Sounds great. Chairs creaked. A pen stopped tapping. The projector flickered as the generator outside hiccuped and recovered. Elena changed the slide. Infrared imagery appeared. figures moving in and out of the compound over 3 nights, timestamps ticking along the bottom. Pattern of life says he doesn't stay more than 4 hours in any one location. This is our first window with him static and his security soft. You're right about your men being the ones at the door. That's why I'm not burning this target with a bad call. She zoomed in on a rooftop entrance. You insert here. Ladder to the roof. Minimal external noise. JTAC will be on the lead bird to coordinate with the MQ-9. If the drone sees anyone who's not armed and not on our list in that building when you breach, we call abort. I own that call. Not you. Dale's jaw worked. And when we're already inside? Then we adjust, she said. But understand this. I will not authorize you to kill the wrong people so we can all feel decisive on a PowerPoint slide tomorrow. The colonel watched her, expression unreadable. For a moment, no one spoke. The hum of the AC filled the gap, along with the distant thud of a helicopter lifting off from the flight line. Finally, Dale shifted forward, elbows on knees. Copy ROE, he said, voice flat. We'll execute. His eyes stayed on her, though, cool and measuring. Just remember, Major, when it goes sideways, the guy behind the radios doesn't bleed. She felt the sting, but she didn't flinch. You're wrong, she said quietly. He just doesn't have time to show it. A couple of heads turned her way, subtle recalibrations in posture. The kid had pushed back without raising her voice. She moved on. Target building layout, expected weapons, ingress routes. Her voice stayed level, unhurried. Every detail she laid down was another small claim staked on the ground between them. By the time she reached the exfil plan, no one was smirking. But as the brief broke up and chairs scraped back, Dale lingered. He said nothing, just looked at the projected compound image, then at her. The insult hung in the air between them, unanswered but not forgotten. He walked out without another word. Elena watched him go, feeling the weight of the headset she'd be wearing when his team lifted off tonight, and knowing that the next time he called her kid, it wouldn't be a joke. It would be a verdict. It started as a blip. Nova, this is SIGINT. We've got a hot handset lighting up near Route Red 2. Possible chatter about delivering the gift. Elena leaned over the intel console, eyes narrowing at the scrolling transcript. The Arabic slang was vague, but the timing scraped at her nerves. Geofix? Working it, the operator muttered. Stand by. Got it. Roughly 5 clicks south of the city perimeter. On the big screen, the map shifted. A red icon pulsed on a thin road that skirted the edge of the designated urban no-strike zone. To the north, the market's no firebox glowed faintly. ISR? Elena asked. MQ-9's on the other side of the city, the comms captain replied. We can slew, but it'll take a few. Do it, she keyed her headset. Havoc 2, Nova, say location. Havoc 2, came the reply, a calm Army platoon leader's voice. We're in the MRAP on Red 2 moving north. Routine patrol. Copy, Havoc 2. You may have a vehicle of interest crossing your path. Stand by for tasking. Maintain current ROE. Observe. Do not engage unless hostile act or intent observed. Roger. Observe only, the platoon leader said, skepticism tucked neatly behind professionalism. The MQ-9 feed slewed, the frame smearing as the sensor panned. Desert Road came into view, heat shimmering. A lone pickup truck crawled along the asphalt, boxy shape in the back under a tarp. Elena's stomach tightened. Zoom. The image stepped closer. The tarp bulged, tied down with fraying rope. No visible weapons, no gunners. SIGINT pinged again. Same handset, ma'am. Almost there. Tell them to be ready. The colonel stepped up beside her, folding his arms. What's your read, Major? Possible VBIID, she said. No visual confirmation. Route leads toward the south checkpoint, then into the city. He glanced at the clock. 1411Z. What assets? A-10C on strip alert at Falcon Airfield, the COAM's captain supplied. 10-minute launch. Winchester on PGMs, but guns and rockets available. The colonel looked at Elena, not the screen. ROE still stands. No engagement without PID. Your call on whether this meets it. Her pulse ticked in her throat. A farm truck, loaded high, driving toward a city that had already bled. Ambiguous language. An MRAP patrol in position to block or hit it. An A-10 that could turn it into scrap on an empty stretch of road. SIGINT, anything about explosives? Specifics? She asked. Negative, just a gift and ready. Dale's voice cut across the net from another channel, patched through. Nova, this is Chief Dale. I'm on Havoc 2 as advisor. Visual on the truck. This thing stinks. She blinked. No one had mentioned he'd ridden out. Describe. Old Toyota, tarp in the back, sagging suspension. Driver's nervous, keeps checking his mirrors. If that's firewood, I'll shave my head. She watched the feed. The truck rolled past a dusty cluster of buildings, then into open terrain again. No escort, no firing ports, no visible detonator wires trailing. Any civilians close? She asked ISR. Negative. Nearest compound's 800 meters off the road. This is your gap, ma'am, the sensor operator said softly. The colonel shifted his weight but didn't speak. Her ROE card sat clipped to her vest. Hostile act or intent must be observed. Reasonable certainty of military objective. Her law of war instructor's voice echoed from years ago. Ambiguity belongs to restraint. Task A-10? The comms captain asked. We can launch now and make decision in the air. She imagined the headlines if they were wrong. Farmer killed in mistake, strike outside no strike zone. The quiet investigations, the families. Havoc 2, Nova, she said. You are to shadow the vehicle at standoff. Do not block, do not fire unless they show weapons or deviate toward dismounted troops. A pause. Copy, shadow only, the platoon leader answered. Elena, the colonel murmured, low enough for only her. You're sure? No, sir, she said. That's the problem. He held her gaze for a second, then looked back to the screen. Your signature. She let A-10 strip alert stand by, unsent. Her finger hovered over the request key, then moved away. Minutes dragged. The MRAP icon followed at a respectful distance on the map, a blue triangle shadowing the red truck symbol. The MQ-9 feed showed dust plumes twinned on the road. SIGINT? She asked. Handset. Went dark, ma'am. The city edge crept nearer. The red circle of the no-strike bubble thickened on the map. Havoc 2, report behavior, Elena said. Vehicle continues north, he replied. Speed steady, looks normal. Normal. For 3 more heartbeats, she let the words sit. Maybe she was wrong. Maybe it was a delivery truck. Maybe. The blast came as a dull, distant thump, out of sync with the visuals. The screen flared white, then gray. The truck vanished into a blossom of dust and debris just outside the no-strike line. Jesus, someone whispered. Radio traffic exploded. Havoc 2, troop, we've got a detonation. Vehicle just went up at checkpoint south minus 300 meters. Casualties on the gate. Say again. Casualties, Elena snapped. Checkpoint barrier took most of it, but we've got at least 3 local soldiers down, some civilians near the food stalls. The colonel's jaw clenched. Around them, chairs scraped as people leaned in, faces tightening. The boom's echo finally rolled over Al-Sara, a faint vibration through concrete. On the ISR feed, dust drifted away, revealing a crater and twisted metal. Figures staggered, some staying down. Her mouth went dry. Every minute of her caution replayed itself in reverse. The moment she decided not to launch the A-10, the insistence on visual proof, the word normal hanging in the air a second too long. She realized she'd balled her hands into fists, unclenched them. "Medical QRF," she ordered. "Spin up Cassivac. Tell partner forces we're sending assistance." The colonel nodded slowly. "I'll handle higher," he said. "You get me full BDA and timeline." He moved away. Dale's voice came over the net, rough and controlled. "Nova, this is Dale. For the record, that was your window. You closed it." There was no accusation in his tone, just fact. That made it worse. "Copy your traffic," she said. She forced her voice level. "Focus on casualties and securing the site. We'll talk later." The line clicked off. Silence seeped into the edges of the JOC, thick and accusing. Screens kept scrolling, data kept arriving, but every pixel felt like it was pointing at her. She stared at the crater on the feed, the smoke curling up. In the corner of the image, the no-strike line marking the city edge glowed calmly, as if the rules had been obeyed, and therefore everything was fine. Her chest ached with something like anger and something like shame. She had done exactly what the book demanded. People were still dead. When the colonel called her over to prep the report for hire, she went. Behind her, as she passed, Dale stepped into the JOC from the flight line, dusty and helmet in hand. Their eyes met. He said nothing. He just looked at the screen, then at her, then walked past to another console. The silence hurt more than anything he could have shouted. They put the VTC in the smallest room, as if distance needed to be compressed to feel more controllable. Elena sat facing the wall screen, uniform immaculate, hands folded on the table where the camera could see them. The air conditioner blasted too cold, prickling the sweat between her shoulder blades. Behind her, the JAG officer and the colonel sat in shadow, just outside the camera's main cone. The screen flickered, then resolved into a grid of faces. A brigadier general at Theater HQ, a couple of staff colonels, a legal advisor in glasses, someone from public affairs whose expression was carefully neutral. Pixelated name blocks floated beneath them. "Al-Sara, we have you," the general said. His voice came through half a beat delayed, clipped and practiced. "Let's discuss yesterday's incident on Route Red 2. "Yes, sir," the colonel replied. "Major Markova, as ops, will walk you through." All eyes shifted to her. Elena tapped the keyboard, bringing up the ISR replay. The truck reappeared, crawling along the road. The crater waited in its future, just off-screen. At approximately 14:06 Z, we received SIGINT, suggesting a possible VBIED moving north toward the city. She began. She laid out the timeline, the handset chatter, the MQ-9's delayed slewing, the ambiguous imagery. She didn't soften the words, normal-looking vehicle. That phrase was on the record now. The general watched without comment, fingers steepled. When the blast hit in the replay, his eyes finally narrowed. "You had an A-10 available," he said. "You chose not to launch." "Yes, sir," she answered. "Under current ROE, we lacked positive identification of a military objective. No visible weapons, no clear hostile act. I tasked the MRAP to shadow and reserved kinetic action for a clearer threshold." One of the staff colonels leaned closer to his mic. "Our read of the transcript shows your chief petty officer on scene recommended more aggressive action," "This thing stinks," were his words, correct? Yes, sir. And later, after the detonation, he stated, the colonel glanced off screen, reading, "That was your window, you closed it." Her jaw tightened. They had pulled the one line that needed no context and gave it none. He was providing his perspective after the fact, she said. At the time, his description didn't meet the standard for hostile act or intent under ROE. He didn't see weapons either, and he complied with my order to shadow only. The legal advisor cleared his throat. "Major, no one is accusing you of violating the rules. Quite the opposite. You adhered to them." He hesitated. "The question from higher is whether the current rules gave you sufficient flexibility to prevent that detonation." The general nodded, seizing the pivot. "Exactly. We're looking forward, not back, Major. Casualties. We're limited, thankfully, but this truck got closer than we like. Our concern is your risk calculus under pressure." Risk calculus, as if it were math and not people. "With respect, sir," she said, forcing her voice steady, "my calculus is framed by the ROE you gave us. Ambiguity defaults to restraint. If you want different behavior, you need different rules." A faint smile tugged at one corner of the PAO's mouth before he masked it. Silence stretched. The general weighed her, weighing not just competence, but usefulness. "Very well," he said at last. "Here's our proposal." On the screen, a document window appeared. New language glared back at her. "Effective immediately, the task force is authorized to engage vehicles outside the urban no-strike zones based on a lower threshold of hostile intent, provided there is corroborating intelligence. SIGINT, pattern of life anomalies, trusted human to. Final authority remains at the task force level." His gaze sharpened. "At your level, Major." Inside the city, the red circles stayed untouched on the map. The rules there remained strict as ever. The Jag beside her shifted, reading quickly. "Legally defensible if applied consistently," he murmured. "But the discretion is broad." Elena stared at the screen. They were widening the lane and painting her name down the middle. If she used it and was wrong, she'd hang alone. If she didn't and more bombs slipped through, they'd quote today's meeting back at her. "Do you accept this authority, Major?" the general asked. The question was rhetorical. The answer was implied in her continued presence. "Yes, sir," she said. "I accept it." "Good." His tone softened a fraction. "We need decisive leadership out there. Trust your instincts. We'll support you, as long as you stay within this framework." "Support you," she translated, "until we need someone to blame." The call ended with formalities and muted thanks. The screen went black, leaving her reflection faintly visible in the glossy surface. Tired eyes, rank shining brighter than she felt. The colonel exhaled. "You handled that," he said. "They're giving you room to maneuver. That's not nothing." "It's also a bigger fall if I slip," she replied. He didn't disagree. "Make sure you don't." Then he left, taking the Jag with him. The room felt smaller once they were gone. She sat for another minute, listening to the encrypted hum of the idle VTC gear. The new ROE phrasing replayed in her mind. Corroborating intelligence, trusted human, pattern of life anomalies. Each word was another lever she could pull, and another she could be judged for. The door creaked. She looked up. Chief Dale stepped in, helmet under his arm, uniform dusty, eyes shadowed by lack of sleep. He glanced at the black screen, then at her. "Everything squared away with the people upstairs?" he asked. "As much as it ever is," she said. He nodded once. "They read my comments back to you?" "Yes." He worked his jaw, then shrugged. For what it's worth, I meant what I said out there. That was our window. I know, she replied, and I own the fact that I closed it. He studied her for a beat, as if testing whether she believed her own words. I'm going to start keeping a detailed log of our missions, he said. Times, calls, what was said, everything. My guys deserve a record that's not just slides and summaries. On the surface, it was a simple statement. Underneath, it sounded like a warning. I will be able to prove what you did. You should, Elena said. Make it accurate. If I screw up, I don't want anyone guessing. That seemed to catch him off guard. He gave a short, humorless breath that might have been a laugh. Roger that, Major. He turned to go, then paused at the door. They want someone decisive, he said over his shoulder. Just remember, they only say that until they see what decisive looks like. The door shut softly behind him. Elena sat alone with the new ROE on her screen. A larger weapon pointed not just at the enemy, but at her own conscience. Knowing the next time a truck stank, there would be no room left to hide inside ambiguity. Night in the intel bay felt different from night outside. No stars, no moon, just the glow of screens and the low, constant whisper of cooling fans struggling against desert dust. Elena sat hunched over a bank of monitors, sleeves rolled, eyes burning, lines of text crawled down one display, radio intercepts time-stamped in Zulu. On another, ISR tracks traced thin yellow paths through the city, looping and crisscrossing. Okay, she said, more to herself than to the room. Walk me through the last 3 incidents again. Her senior analyst, Warrant Officer Kim, zoomed the map out. V-bide yesterday, checkpoint. Before that, the roadside IED on Route Blue, and last week's partial detonation near the power substation. Different neighborhoods, no common safe house. It's diffuse by design. Or we're looking at the wrong common point, Elena murmured. At the back of the room, a younger specialist spoke up. Ma'am, human source Nadir insists the bomb maker's network is staging from commercial warehouses on the east side. He's given us 2 grid squares already. Dale's voice came from the doorway. Yeah, and both grids were dry holes. He stepped into the blue light, shadows under his eyes. Your guy's either guessing or feeding us what someone wants us to see. Elena didn't turn from the screens. Nadir gave us the handset ID we traced to yesterday's truck. He's not useless. Lucky, Dale countered. Broken clocks and all that. RO guidance glared at her from a laminated card pinned to the console. No unilateral, action based solely on uncorroborated human. Nader lived or died, operationally, by that sentence. Pull up his last 3 reports, she said. Overlay them on the city grid. Kim nodded, fingers flying. Colored circles appeared on the map. Warehouses, alleys, a fuel depot on the outskirts. To Elena, it looked like noise. Now layer in all the places we've seen those tanker trucks, she added. Another set of icons blinked into view, small diamonds marking fuel convoys. Most followed predictable routes. Depot to stations, depot to construction sites. Legitimate life, but not all. Stop, she said. Back up 2 days. Kim scrolled the time slider, tracks rewound, lines unspooling backward. One diamond showed a tanker cutting from the main road toward a dense district. Zoom here, Elena ordered. The map magnified, streets tightening. A label popped up, District 14 Primary School. The truck icon paused near it, then continued on. Could be random, Dale said. School's on a main drag. Maybe, she replied. Run it again, last week. More tracks, different days, same district. Twice, tankers slowed near the same cluster of schools. Her skin prickled. Now overlay Nadir's warehouse grids. Kim frowned as colored circles reappeared. One sat only a few hundred meters from the primary school. Another straddled a road used by two of the suspect tanker routes. Still not proof, Dale said. We can't storm every classroom because a truck took the scenic route. Elena zoomed out, then in again on the school marker. The icon glowed bright in the dim room, a fixed point around which chaos orbited. Kids, teachers, a perfect shield. This isn't about storming anything, she said quietly. Not yet. She leaned toward the comms console. Tasking request. I want the MQ-9 to add an orbit over Grid Hotel 745 priority surveillance. Label it as Infrastructure Pattern of Life Study. Kim shot her a look. The school. Officially, the neighborhood, Elena corrected. We're still within ROE. We're just watching. Dale crossed his arms. You're burning flight hours on a hunch. She met his eyes at last. I'm correlating independent sources, humant, fuel movement, previous attacks near critical sites. That's exactly what the new ROE asked for. He held her gaze, then looked back at the map. And if you're wrong, then we get more data, she said. And your guys sleep in their bunks instead of beside a crater. I'll live with that. What she didn't say was the other possibility, that she was right. And every minute they watched would pull her closer to a decision worse than yesterday's. The tasking went out. On the screen, a thin new ring appeared over District 14, an invisible eye added to the sky. Elena sat back, rubbing at the ache between her eyes. The pattern she'd found wasn't solid enough. To brief as fact, not yet. It was a ghost. Traced in tanker routes and whispered reports and too many coincidences near places that should never be targets. Don't tell Dale's log about this one yet, she said to Kim, half joking. Kim nodded, not smiling. Understood, ma'am. The room hummed on, blue and sleepless, while over a quiet school in a crowded city, a drone banked into a new orbit it hadn't flown the night before. The rotors were already spinning on the pad when Elena stepped out to the edge of the flight line. Night wrapped Al-Sara in a warm, dusty blanket. The only stars came from aircraft nav lights and the glow from the JOC windows behind her. In the green wash of NVGs, two MH-61 Blackhawks hunched like insects, crews moving around them in practiced choreography. The roar pressed against her chest. Chief Dale met her halfway, helmet clipped to his vest, rifle slung. We're light, he said without preamble. One squad inside a suspect warehouse in a hostile neighborhood. No gunship, no second element to block. You have 2 birds, 1 assault team, 1 small security element, Elena replied. MQ-9 overhead, plus partner police on call if you need a cordon. The objective is confirmation, not a street war. He jerked his chin toward the city. You think the network's going to shake hands and let us leave if we find anything? ROE says minimum necessary force, she reminded him. Break contact if you hit non-combatants in the target structure. We're not going through walls shooting blind because of a hunch and a rumor. He stared at her for a moment through the NVG mount on his helmet. You're gambling with my guys on half a theory. I'm gambling with your guys instead of the city, she said quietly. And I'm doing it with as small a footprint as possible. You want to argue force size? Take it up with the politicians who panic when we breathe near a school. He grimaced but didn't push further. Fine. Call sign Havoc 2 is loaded. We step off on your word, Nova. She flinched, just slightly, at the call sign. It made her sound like someone who didn't stay in rooms full of screens. Word is given, she said. Ingress as briefed. We stay within ROE. You see kids or civilians inside that structure, you pull out, and we regroup. He nodded, then jogged toward the bird, disappearing into the chaos of crew chiefs and swinging rotor blades. Back in the JOS, the world narrowed to feeds and voices. The MQ-9's FLIR painted the city in grainy black and white. The target building, one of Nadir's warehouses near District 14, sat squat on a side street, shadowed, unremarkable. "Havoc 2, Nova," she said into her headset as the helicopters skimmed low over the outskirts. "ROE reminder. Minimum force. Break contact on non-combatant presence." "Havoc 2 copies ROE." Dale's voice came back, clipped. On the screen, the birds flared onto a rooftop 1 block away, dust blooming. Figures spilled out, small white smudges against the darker roofs. They moved fast, bounding along alleyways, heat signatures crisp under IR. "Entry in 30, Dale reported. She watched them stack on the warehouse door, weapons up. Somewhere beneath the drone's hum, she could almost hear their breathing. "Breach," he said. The door went in, a dull flash and puff of heat. They flowed inside. For long seconds, the feed showed only a roof and a few drifting heat plumes. Inside, the team's helmet cameras, that she couldn't see in real time, tracked through corridors that existed only as lines on the floor plan in her mind. "Contact?" she asked. "Negative," came a whispered reply from one of the team leaders. "Clearing first floor. We've got cameras, multiple pinhole cams in corners, wiring leads upstairs. Surveillance, not storage." "Second floor," Dale called. "Same thing. No explosives, just cables, monitors, recording gear. Looks like they watched the street, maybe the school." Elena exhaled slowly. Not wrong then, just not what she'd hoped, or dreaded. "Non-combatants?" she asked. A new voice broke in, breathless and frightened. Wait, don't shoot! I am just janitor." She straightened. "Havoc 2, Nova, ROE. Secure and separate the non-combatant. No harm unless hostile act." "Copy," Dale said. In the background, she heard muffled commands. A man's voice babbling in broken English. "He says he cleans at night. Says they make him leave when they come. Claims they only visit after midnight some nights. Set up equipment, then go. No names." "They?" Elena echoed. "Yeah. They. He keeps pointing toward the school when he talks about them." A pause. "No explosives on site, Major. This place is a camera hub, not a bomb factory." Heat flared in her cheeks. Half relief, half humiliation. She'd pushed for a raid and turned up empty rooms and a terrified janitor. "Copy your assessment," she said. "Tag the equipment, document everything, then prepare to exfil. We'll have partner forces pick up the janitor for debrief. Do not hand him over to anyone who just shows up at the gate." "Understood," Dale said. His tone was unreadable. Minutes later, the small team melted back into the night. On the feed, the Blackhawks flared again, silhouettes climbing aboard. As the birds lifted, Elena had Kim widen the MQ-9's field of view, catching the broader district. Rows of low buildings, narrow streets, the dark outlines of 2 schools. Children's playground equipment looked skeletal under infrared. "Track exfil," she said. "Keep the orbit a little longer." The helicopters faded toward base. The city remained. Then, at the edge of the frame, a pair of tanker trucks appeared, white-hot on flyer, lumbering up the road. They slowed as they passed the primary school, idling for a full 40 seconds before rolling on. Her stomach dropped. "Mark that," she ordered. "Time, grid, speed, every frame." Kim's fingers flew. Empty rooms, cameras, A janitor who said they come at night, and fuel trucks hovering outside a school when no deliveries were scheduled. Elena watched the trucks vanish into the dark, feeling the pattern tighten around her like a net no one else could see yet. By late afternoon, the JOC smelled like old coffee and dry erase fumes. Elena stood at the front board, marker in hand, the digital map mirrored on the wall screen behind her. Colored lines traced fuel routes, checkered polygons marked recent blast sites, and red circles indicated no strike zones around hospitals, markets, and schools. "We're thinking about this wrong," she said. "You're treating each attack as a separate event. It's not. It's rehearsal." One of the staff officers, a Marine major, frowned. "With respect, ma'am, VBIEDs at a checkpoint and roadside bombs near power lines don't scream school district as the center of gravity." She circled a cluster of icons with the marker. "That's because you're staring at where they detonated. Look at where the enabling activity occurs." Kim brought up another overlay. Tanker routes appeared, bright threads moving through the city. Two of them slowed near District 14, tiny pauses in long paths. "These trucks have no legitimate delivery orders for that area at those times," Elena said. "Twice in the last week they loitered within a block of Primary School 14, the same district where our empty warehouse just happened to be wired to watch the street." "Could be fuel diversions," the Marine said. "Gray market. Theft." "Maybe," she allowed. "Or maybe they're staging components and watching who responds. We're not the only ones doing pattern of life analysis." From his seat at the edge of the horseshoe, Dale leaned back, arms crossed. "And even if you're right, you can't shoot near a school," he said. "ROE says 200 meters standoff from humanitarian sites unless God himself signs the waiver." He wasn't wrong. The ROE card on her console spelled it out. No kinetic fires within 200 meters of registered humanitarian sites, including schools, absent an imminent, observable mass casualty threat. "I'm not asking to drop on classrooms," Elena replied. "I'm asking to stop pretending this district is just another block on the map." The colonel watched her from the side, letting the argument run. "HQ wants pressure in Sector West," the Marine reminded her. "They're already flagging us for not hitting those suspected safe houses by the river. We fixate on one school. We'll look like we're ignoring guidance." Elena capped the marker with more force than necessary. "HQ wants results they can brief. I want the attack that doesn't happen because we were in the right place at the right time. Those are harder to put on slides." Silence for a beat. Radios crackled in the background, with reports from another unit trading fire on the outskirts. Someone else's crisis. She turned back to the map. "Tasking update," she said. "Effective immediately. District 14 is priority surveillance. ISR will maintain enhanced coverage during peak transit hours and overnight. Label it as infrastructure and population movement study." Kim nodded, fingers flying over the keyboard. A subtle tag appeared over the district on the digital overlay. "And QRF?" the colonel asked. Elena hesitated a half-second, then made the call she'd been circling all day. "Havoc 2 will be primary QRF for District 14, she said. "They're already spun up on the terrain. If this is where it breaks, I want our most experienced element closest." Across the room, Dale's head snapped up. "That's a lot of our time tied to one neighborhood," he said slowly, "while everybody else gets to chase the HVTs by the river." "I'm not tying you anywhere," she said. "I'm positioning you. You'll still rotate, still hit other objectives, but if anything pops near that school, anything that smells like fuel or bulk movement, you move first." He studied the map, then her. You know something you're not saying? She felt the pull to over-explain. Nadir's terrified eyes, the janitors, they come at night, the trucks idling just long enough to mean something. None of it met the threshold for concrete intel. All of it lived in the gray zone that had already nearly burned her once. I know enough to be uneasy, she said, and enough to keep eyes on that grid. That's not what I asked, he replied. She held his gaze. You asked if I'm using your men as bait. I'm not. I'm using them as a brake pedal. If this starts rolling, I want someone there who knows how to stop it without making it worse. The colonel finally stepped in. The tasking stands, he said. If intel's wrong, we lose flight hours and a few nights of sleep. If it's right and we ignore it. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. The meeting broke up. Chairs scraped, radios murmured. Someone wiped away part of the board and replaced it with tomorrow's logistics. Dale stayed behind. He walked up to the map, studying the neat circle around District 14. Funny thing about lines on a map, he said quietly. They don't bleed. People do. She swallowed. I know. He looked at her, suspicion and something like reluctant trust warring in his eyes. Then you'd better be right about this district, Major. Because if you're wrong, we're sitting on the wrong doorstep when the real door blows in. He turned and left before she could answer, leaving her alone with the map. One more commander rearranging colors, hoping the next red circle wouldn't be drawn where she'd chosen to look away. Rain came as a surprise. It usually did here. By 21 Horde Local, a thin drizzle was turning the outer roads into slick ribbons. On the JOC's main screen, droplets streaked the MQ-9's daytime camera before the sensor switched back to FLUR, trading raindrops for white-hot shapes. Havoc 2, Nova, Elena said into her headset. Confirm position. Nova, Havoc 2, Dale replied. We're in the stack 2 clicks south of District 14. 4 M151s, engines running. We can see the district lights. Still don't know why we're babysitting this place instead of chasing the river targets. She watched his convoy as faint IR blobs on a side feed, parked in the dark off a secondary road. Your tasking is overwatch and rapid response. Observe only unless engaged. ROE hasn't changed. Roger, observe only, he said, the words flat. For the log, intel basis for this posture? There it was, the log he'd promised, the record. Pattern of life anomalies, fuel routes, and prior surveillance indications, Elena answered. All within the existing ROE framework. That's what goes in your log. A soft snort crackled in her ear. Copy that, Major. Anomalies. She ignored the dig. On the main screen, the school district glowed in ghostly grayscale, rectangles of buildings, a dark quadrangle where a playground sat. The MQ-9's orbit was higher and wider than usual, trading detail for subtlety. Any movement? She asked the sensor operator. Low-level foot traffic, he said. A few vehicles on the main drag, nothing near the school complex yet. Minutes pooled into an hour. Radios murmured with other units' business. Convoys checking in. A distant report of sporadic contact in another sector. In the JOC, the hum of electronics and the patter of rain on the roof made the room feel smaller. Havoc 2 status? Elena asked. Bored, Dale replied. But ready. My guys are starting to think you've got a crush on this district, Nova. Tell them I don't get attached, she said. I just hold grudges. He gave a brief chuckle. It was gone quickly. The first shots came as faint flickers on flyer, tiny sparks near the edge of the school grid. A beat later, the comms spiked. Break, break, break! A local partner force unit shouted over the net. Taking small arms fire near District 14 roundabout, unknown shooters. Requesting assistance. Elena's eyes snapped to the new marker blinking on the map, just outside the school's no-strike circle. Havoc 2, Nova. Hold position, she said immediately. Say again, hold. Nova, they're less than a click from our location, Dale answered. Engines rumbled louder through his mic. We can be there in 3 minutes. Negative. ROE remains observe only unless you are fired upon, she said. Partner forces hold primary jurisdiction inside the district. We don't rush in on gunshots without knowing what we're walking into. In the background, she heard his men, frustrated voices, someone saying, "We're just sitting here while they get chewed up?" "Nova, this is Havoc 2 actual," he said, voice tight. "Recommend we move to support. We're your tripwire, remember? Looks like someone just kicked it." Rain hissed against the JOC's windows. On the feed, tracer rounds arced briefly, then vanished. No muzzle flashes near the school itself, just the roundabout. "Tripwires tell you something's wrong," Elena replied. "They don't charge the house alone. Hold, that's an order." The pause felt long enough to break. "Copy, holding," Dale said at last. For the log, Havoc 2 remained in place at 2117 local under direct order from Ops despite proximate contact. Kim glanced at Elena, worried. She kept her gaze on the screen. Noted. The burst of fire tapered off. Partner forces reported the shooters melting away into alleyways. 2 lightly wounded officers. No civilians hit. Another little flare-up in a war full of them. "Contact resolved," the translator relayed over a second channel. "No further engagement requested." Elena's shoulders loosened a fraction. Then the tanker appeared. "New vehicle entering AO," the sensor operator said. "Single truck, thermal signature consistent with loaded tanker, approaching from the east." The white-hot shape rolled into frame, radiating heat through the rain. It lumbered down the main road, past shuttered shops. "Track it," Elena ordered. They watched as it approached the school block. Instead of continuing straight, it slowed more, and then came to a full stop just opposite the school's main gate. "Time mark," she said. "Grid." "Marked," Kim answered. 30 seconds passed. 40. The truck idled, engine a bright kernel on FLIR. No one stepped out. No obvious hose lines. Just a long, purposeful pause. "Havoc 2, do you have eyes on that truck from your position?" Elena asked. "Negative, terrain masks it," Dale replied. "You want us to move?" "No," she said. The word tasted like rust. "We keep the pattern clean. They think no one's watching, they'll repeat it." On screen, the tanker finally shifted gears and rolled forward. Instead of continuing along the road, it turned into a narrow side street and disappeared under the dark rectangle of a covered garage built into a residential block. Her pulse kicked. "Backtrack that route," she told the sensor operator. "Tag that garage. I want it on every overlay." "Yes, ma'am." Rain streaked down the JOC windows. In the convoy, Dale's men sat in idling Humvees, watching nothing happen and knowing something had. "Havoc 2, Nova," Elena said quietly. "Stand by for updated tasking in the morning. For tonight, maintain current posture and then RTB at 23 Zorks local." "Copy," Dale answered. A beat. "For the log, Major?" She swallowed. "For the log, observed repeat tanker loiter and entry into unregistered garage adjacent to District 14 school, time marked under ISR, no kinetic action taken, by design." He was silent for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was lower. "Understood." She ended the transmission and stared at the map, at the new little box outlining the garage. The enemy had tugged the tripwire, and found nothing but silence, which meant the next time they moved the trucks, it wouldn't be a test. The cafe was the kind of place no one remembered 5 minutes after passing it. Elena sat at a small metal table in the narrow alley, back to the wall, local scarf pulled over her hair. The air smelled of diesel, cheap coffee, and the faint sweetness of frying dough from a vendor at the corner. Above, the sky was a washed-out gray slice. Somewhere far higher, the MQ-9 circled, unseen but very present in her right ear. Nova, ISR, the sensor operator murmured. No armed signatures within 2 blocks. Light foot traffic. You're clean for now. Copy, she whispered, touching the tiny earpiece. Across from her, the chair sat empty. Her watch ticked past the agreed time, 15 minutes late. She forced herself not to keep checking the alley mouth, not to telegraph nerves. Kim's voice crackled softly on the net from the JOC. Local partner liaison reports source en route. Heavy checkpoints today. Could be slowed. Or could be running, she thought. Or dead. A man finally appeared at the alley entrance, shoulders hunched, hands jammed into a cheap jacket. Nadir looked older than the last time she'd seen him on a grainy, secure screen, eyes sunk deeper, beard more ragged. He hesitated, scanned the cafe, then made for her table with a jerky, too-fast walk. You're late, she said in Arabic as he sat. You're asking for time from a man others want to kill, he replied, voice shaking. That is never punctual time, Major. He refused coffee, fingers tapping on his knee under the table. Sweat beaded at his temple despite the cool air. You said you have more, Elena said. Something about the school. He flinched at the word. Don't say it, he hissed. Not here. She leaned in, keeping her face calm. Then tell me what you can without names, and make it worth the risk you're taking. We are not here to trade ghost stories. He swallowed. His gaze flicked toward the alley mouth again. They bring drums, he said quietly. Not fuel, chemicals. Heavy. They use the back gate late at night, no lights. Men with beards, not teachers. They make the janitor leave. Her stomach tightened. How do you know they're chemicals? I used to stack fuel, he said. Smell is wrong. They cover them, but liquid inside moves differently. And I heard one say, when this goes, half the district burns. The words hung between them like a dropped match. On the net, Kim whispered, We're recording. ISR confirms he's not armed. Still no additional heat signatures nearby. Why didn't you tell us this before? Elena asked. Nadir's eyes flashed. Because before, they did not come for my son. She went still. Explain. They stopped him after school, he said. Searched his bag, asked questions about me. He is 10. His voice cracked. I told your liaison I want my family out. Away. You say no. So why should I give you anything except what? Keeps us breathing until tomorrow? ROE and policy sat in her head like a sighting manual. No direct U.S. role in civilian extraction. Partner forces lead. Intelligence considerations do not override host nation sovereignty. Nadir, she said carefully, I cannot simply put your family on a helicopter and fly them to safety. There are rules. Your rules did not stop the last bomb, he snapped. Heads turned at nearby tables. He immediately hunched lower, voice dropping. They did not stop the truck at the checkpoint. They will not stop what is under that school. I am giving you a chance to stop something bigger. You want more? Take my family or I vanish. She hated how reasonable he sounded. Nova, Kim said quietly in her ear. HQ will never sign off on an extraction based on this. You promise anything we can't deliver, you break the asset and maybe the case. Elena stared at the man across from her. hands shaking. A father, not a chess piece. She lowered her voice. "Listen to me. I can't promise a helicopter," she said. That much, at least, was true. "But if you keep talking, I can make sure your family is looked after, quietly. There are people who owe me favors. They can move a family a few streets, maybe a different district. Safer." It was a careful lie. Truth wrapped in implication. She had contacts. She could nudge partner forces. But she could not guarantee safety the way he heard it now. His eyes searched hers, desperate for something to grip. "You swear?" "I swear I will not leave them where they are," she said. "But I need everything. Layout. How many drums? Who guards them?" He exhaled shakily, then began to talk. He described a service entrance at the rear of the school, deliveries after midnight, men with radios who never spoke to teachers. He traced an outline of the basement on a napkin, rooms he'd glimpsed when a door had been left open. He counted drums on his fingers, whispered brand names on the labels he'd glimpsed. Industrial chemicals. Some she recognized as fertilizer components, others worse. "Nova, this matches known precursors," Kim said, voice tight. "If this is accurate, it's enough to push for ROE review." "Copy," Elena murmured. Footsteps sounded at the alley mouth again. A pair of uniformed local police strolled past, not looking their way, but Nadir flinched hard enough to rattle the table. "I should go," he said, pushing his chair back. "They are watching me now. I feel it. You have what you want." "Stay in touch with our liaison," she said. "We move your family. We move them quietly. No sudden changes, no big goodbyes. Understand?" He nodded, eyes shining with something like hope and terror mixed. "If you break this promise, Major, I will not forgive you even from the grave," he said softly. She had no answer to that. That wouldn't be another lie. As he left, the drone's operator murmured, "Source departing northbound. No tail we can see. We'll keep an eye for a few blocks." "Do it," Elena said, rising. Her knees ached as she stood. The walk back to the armored SUV waiting at the next street felt longer than it was. By the time she reached the JOC again, the air felt thinner. She spread the napkin on the table, tracing his crude basement outline with her finger, while Kim translated and logged. An hour later, the partner liaison's voice came over the net, strained. "Ma'am, we have a problem. Nadir missed his scheduled check-in. Neighbors say armed men in an unmarked truck came to his building right after he got home. He and his family are gone." "Gone. Do we know who took them?" Elena asked. "Negative. Not police, not our people." A pause. "Someone knew he talked to you." She stared at the napkin, its penciled basement stairs and tiny squares labeled in shaky script. Ghosts on paper. A family vanished. And beneath a school she'd never set foot in, drums that might change her next decision from difficult to unforgivable. The request form looked deceptively simple. A few boxes, a justification block, a signature line. Elena stared at it on her screen, then at the empty narrative of necessity field. How do you condense fear of an unwitnessed catastrophe into a paragraph? Kim stood beside her chair, arms folded. "We've got Nadir's basement sketch, ISR on the tankers, the surveillance hub near the school," he said. "It's thin, but it's more than we had on that checkpoint truck." "Thin is generous," the JAG captain muttered from the other side of the table. "You're asking to bend ROE around a school without direct visual on explosives. That's ambitious." "It's also what they asked for last week," Elena replied. "They wanted flexibility. This is what that looks like before the crater." she typed, fingers steady despite the tension in her shoulders. Pattern of life, human, and technical indicators strongly suggest the presence of mass casualty explosive materials within structures adjacent to District 14 Primary School. Request pre-designated authority to act in face of imminent observable threat emanating from this node. The words felt like they were writing a check her conscience would have to cash later. The secure VTC spun up again, the same grid of faces from HQ blinking into existence. The Brigadier General, the Staff Colonels, JAG, and PAO. Al-Sara, we have your waiver request, the General said. Walk us through why we should even consider authorizing kinetic action near a school. She laid it out. The tanker pauses. The surveillance warehouse. Nadir's account of drums in the basement. His subsequent disappearance. She heard herself sounding more like a prosecutor than an ops officer, stacking circumstantial evidence into a rough shape of certainty. The legal advisor leaned forward. Major, all of this is still inference. No ISR imagery from inside the school, no confirmed site of explosives, no hostile act yet. You're asking for pre-authorized exception to a 200-meter humanitarian buffer. Yes, sir, Elena said. Because if we wait for the hostile act to happen inside the district, the body count will define the term mass casualty for us. The general exhaled through his nose. We cannot authorize preemptive strikes on schools based on a drawing on a napkin and a missing informant, he said. Politically, legally, morally, it doesn't hold. The word schools landed heavy. She felt her jaw clench. I'm not asking to level the building on a hunch, she said carefully. I'm asking for clear authority to act if what we're seeing is the staging for an attack. Specifically, if tanker assets depart that node toward populated areas. When the trucks move, it will already be almost too late. The JAG on their side murmured into his mic, then nodded slowly. There is room, he said, for a tightly bounded exception. The HQ legal advisor sighed. Here is what we can support, he said. You may not proactively strike the school or its immediate structures based solely on current intel. However, if you observe an imminent, observable mass casualty threat emanating from that location, such as fuel trucks departing in formation toward dense civilian areas, you may engage those vehicles even within the current 200-meter buffer. The phrase landed like a verdict. Imminent, observable mass casualty threat. Her new leash. Authority is delegated to task force level, the general added. To you, Major, you pull that trigger, you own it. Understood? Understood, sir, she said. Use it wisely, he said. We'll review every instance. There will be no blank checks. The screen went dark again, leaving only her reflection and the ghost of the phrase hanging in the air. Congratulations, the JAG captain said dryly. You just became the person everyone will quote when this goes right or wrong. Elena signed the digital form. The cursor blinked next to her name for a second, then disappeared as the system accepted her approval. Back on the ops floor, she pulled up the tasking board. District 14 glowed softly. Havoc 2, she called over the net. Nova, be advised, effective immediately, you are primary quick reaction and reconnaissance element for District 14 and surrounding routes. Move your staging point closer, in the defilade off Route 6, 1 click south of the school grid. Maintain readiness to intercept any fuel convoys departing that node. Dale's reply came back after a beat. Copy, Nova, closer to the blast radius. For the log, mission adjustment based on updated ROE. She hesitated, then added, for the log, authority for engagement in case of imminent, observable, mass casualty threat now delegated to task force operations. That means me. He was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was softer. Understood, Major. She removed her headset and stared at the map, at Havoc 2's new staging icon inching closer to the school. The green light she'd fought for was no victory. It was a line she'd someday have to cross, and there would be no way to pretend she hadn't seen it coming. It was almost midnight local when the kids' voices came over the net. "Nova, this is Havoc 2, Dale said, breathing hard. "We're in. Repeat, we are inside the primary structure." On the MQ-9's feed, the school was a blocky silhouette, windows dark. Elena watched small white signatures move through the corridors. Dale's team, a dozen ghosts on flyer. "Copy, Havoc 2, she replied. "ROE reminder, no fires unless hostile act or intent observed. Confirm no civilians in your entry lane." "Front corridors are clear," he said, moving to lower level. Lower level. The napkin sketch in her drawer flashed through her mind. Drums, basements. "ISR, give me the street picture," she told the sensor operator. The camera slewed wider. The district glowed in grayscale. Alleys, parked cars, a few late pedestrians. Then, far side of the block, a tanker truck rolled into frame, followed by another. They eased toward the school like they'd done before, brakes sighing, engines hot white on flyer. "Mark those," she said. "Grid and time." "Havoc 2, Nova," she added. "Be advised, tankers are entering your grid, same pattern as previous nights." There was a soft curse on his end. "Copy, we're committed. Reaching lower landing now." Static crackled. Then another voice cut in, high and trembling. A child crying near an open mic. "Break, break," Dale said quickly. "We have hostages, multiple, kids, some staff. They're zip-tied in a side room off the basement corridor." Elena's throat went tight. "Any visual on drums or wiring?" "Affirmative," he said. "At least a dozen large drums in the far storage room. Visible cabling, homebrew firing circuits. Whoever rigged this knew what they were doing." The JAG captain, standing behind her, whispered something under his breath that sounded like a prayer. "Any indication of remote trigger?" she asked. "Can't tell yet," Dale replied. "But if the trucks outside are part of this, we're sitting on the matchbox." On the feed, the two tankers came to a halt near the main gate and idled, no visible dismounts. "Havoc 2, priority," Elena said. "ROE update in effect. We are authorized to engage those vehicles if they depart the node toward populated areas. Until then, no strike." "So we watch them fuel up the apocalypse?" One of the operators muttered over an open sub-channel. "Control your comms," Dale snapped. "Higher, headquarters broke in." The general's voice sharper than usual. "Task Force, this is Victor Actual. We're monitoring your ISR. Confirm, explosives on site, hostages present, tanker assets positioned." "Confirmed," Elena said. "We have at least partial visual on all three." "ROE stands as amended," the general said. "School structure itself remains no strike unless detonations are in progress. Vehicles may be engaged if they constitute an imminent mass casualty threat. Final decision at your level, Major." The words hit harder, spoken aloud, than they had on paper. "At your level." "Havoc 2, Nova," she said, forcing her voice steady. "Your immediate task is securing hostages and preventing any manual detonation. Do not attempt to disarm drums unless you have no choice." "Roger," Dale said. "We're cutting ties now, moving kids to upper corridors. But if those trucks move, we're not clearing this place in time." On ISR, one of the truck drivers finally appeared. A small figure dropping from the cab, walking back along the tanker's flank. Elena tracked his heat signature, waiting for a weapon to glint, a wire to show, anything that would turn inference into proof. Nothing. Just a man checking his wheels in the rain. Her hand hovered near the cleared hot field on the fire control interface. GBU-12s were already hung on the MQ-9 laser code set. A strike here, offset just enough, might shred the tankers and spare part of the building. Might. Havoc 2, report positions, she said. Main element with hostages on first floor near stairwell, Dale answered. 2 men still in the basement corridor overwatching the drums. We're spread thin, Major. On the screen, the second tanker's brake lights flared, then went dark. Slowly, its thermal profile shifted as it began to roll forward. Vehicle 1 is moving, the sensor operator said. Heading north, toward denser housing. This is your trigger, ma'am. The general's voice cut in again, colder now. Task Force, we concur that an imminent, observable threat exists. Authority to engage is delegated to Ops. Make your call, Major. The room around her faded. Jag, Kim, the colonel all becoming background noise. In her mind, Route Red 2 replayed, the truck she'd let pass, the delayed boom, the crater. Faces she'd never seen, but whose absence haunted every report. Now there were other faces, kids' voices in her headset, a janitor's shaking hands, Nadir's warning about half a district burning, and Dale, somewhere under that roof, trusting her enough to bring his men into the blast radius. Nova, he said quietly. No call signs, no formality. If you hesitate, we lose everything. Hit it before it hits them. On the feed, the moving tanker picked up speed, nose angling toward the narrow corridor of streets that led to the heart of the city. Elena realized her finger was already resting on the confirmation key. She exhaled once, the sound barely audible in the headset. Copy all, she said. Final decision. She didn't remember actually saying the words, only the feel of her mouth forming them. Reaper 1, Nova, cleared hot. Adjust aim point 20 meters short of Tanker 1, northing offset 25. Emphasis on vehicles, not structure. Copy cleared hot with offset, the remote pilot replied, voice too calm. Laser on, time to impact, 30 seconds. In the JOC, the air went thin. The ops floor noise dropped to a hush, broken only by keyboard clicks and the faint hiss of the air conditioner. Somewhere, a printer spat out paper it no longer mattered to read. On the MQ-9 feed, the crosshairs steadied near the front of the school gate, just ahead of the lead tanker. The truck's engine glowed white in flare, its massive fuel load a dull, ominous oval. Havoc 2, Nova? Elena said. Her voice sounded distant in her own ears. Impact imminent. Get everyone as far from exterior walls as you can without compromising the hostages. We don't have distance, Dale shot back. We have stairwells and drywall. Use them, she said. Now. 10 seconds, the pilot called. Elena's hand closed around the edge of the console. The room seemed to tilt slightly. Someone behind her whispered something that might have been a prayer. Someone else swore under their breath. 5, 4, 3. The screen flared white. For a heartbeat, there was nothing but overexposed light. Then the blast resolved, shock front rippling outward, the lead tanker disintegrating in a blossom of heat and debris. The second truck went a heartbeat later, sympathetic detonation, fire rolling low along the street. The school's facade buckled, windows shattering outward. The image quivered as the MQ-9 rode out the pressure wave. Audio lagged behind. God! Havoc 2, report! Elena snapped, throat tight. Static, a secondary rumble. Then the howl of multiple open mics, A roar of sound that made no sense at first. Shouts in English and Arabic. Children crying, someone screaming, "Help! Help!" into a channel that wasn't meant for them. "Break! Break! Break!" she said louder. "Havoc 2 only! Status!" A coughing voice cut through, thin and raw. "Nova, this is Havoc 2 actual." "Dale. We're still here." It took her a second to process the words. Her knees went weak with a rush of relief she refused to show. "Report condition," she said. "Multiple wounded," he said. "Partial collapse near the basement corridor. One of my guys is trapped under debris. Some kids hurt, some okay. You dropped that damn thing almost on our heads." "I offset the aim point," she said automatically. "We targeted the street. To the kids, it doesn't matter where your cursor was," he snapped. "You brought the sky down." On the feed, dust slowly settled. The street outside the school was a scorched smear. Both tankers were burning ruins, their heat signatures violent and then degrading. Flames licked at nearby storefronts, but there was no chain of secondary explosions. No new fireballs racing into the district. "ROE update," the JAG captain said urgently at her shoulder. "No further strikes inside the affected radius until BDA. Ground forces only from here." "Copy," Elena said. "Reaper 1, hold orbit, no re-attack. Stay on station for ISR and potential laser designation only." "Reaper 1, Roger. Holding," the pilot replied. "Ordnance Winchester." She switched channels. "Medevac, this is Nova. Spin up 1 HH-60 for immediate launch to District 14 LZ Bravo. Expect mixed casualties, including pediatric. Partner forces to secure perimeter." "Medevac copies," came the answer. "Wheels up in 5. Static crackled again. "Nova, Havoc 2, Dale said, the strain in his voice heavier now. "We've got at least 2 KIA, one of mine, one adult staff. Several kids with lacerations, possible fractures. That blast shook the whole building. But the drums in the basement didn't go. They're cracked, some leaking, but not detonated." "Any sign of fire in the lower level?" she asked. "Negative. Smoke, dust, panic. No active burn, feels like a miracle." She stared at the charred smear of the trucks on the feed. Not a miracle, she thought. Just an offset and a sick bit of luck. "Havoc 2, priority task," she said aloud. "Stabilize wounded, consolidate hostages in structurally sound rooms away from exterior and basement. Partner forces en route to assist. HH-60 inbound for worst casualties. Do not attempt to move or tamper with drums." "Copy," he said. A pause. "For the log, Major. Havoc 2 remained inside target structure during friendly airstrike, resulting in friendly and civilian casualties." The words landed like blows. "For the log," she replied, forcing each syllable. "Airstrike destroyed 2 fully loaded tanker trucks departing the node, preventing probable mass casualty event in District 14. Casualties on site acknowledged. Full BDA to follow." Kim swallowed audibly beside her. On the feed, local fire crews, dark silhouettes with faint reflective strips, began to swarm the street, spraying water on the burning wreckage. Reports filtered in over the next hour, fractured and overlapping. Partner force radio nets calling the strike both salvation and catastrophe in the same sentences. A local commander, shaken, telling her through an interpreter that if those trucks had reached the central bazaar, we would be counting bodies in thousands. She logged everything. Times, names, numbers that didn't feel real yet. Minimum civilian fatalities, according to initial counts. Structural damage confined mostly to the front of the school and the street. On another monitor, a live news feed from a regional channel had already picked up footage shot on a phone. a distant plume of smoke over District 14, sirens wailing. The Chirons scrolled in frantic script. The words "foreign airstrike" flashed once before being replaced by "mysterious explosion." Elena muted it. She'd hear the official version soon enough. "Havoc 2 Nova," she said one last time that night, voice rough. "Confirm you are ready to RTB once medevac complete." "We'll leave when the last bird lifts," Dale replied. "Not before, for all of us." "Copy," she said. She took off her headset only when the HH-60 icon finally peeled away from the district. Route arrow bending back toward Al-Sara. The JOC smelled like sweat, dust, and burned electronics. Her eyes burned from more than the screens. On the MQ-9's feed, District 14 slowly dimmed. The trucks were gone, reduced to cooling metal and ash. The school still stood, wounded but upright, a scar on the map instead of a crater. Containment, she told herself. Not victory. Never that. And even as she watched, she could already feel the edges of the story being trimmed in her mind. Numbers that would replace faces, phrases that would sand down her choice into something easier to brief. The conference room was too bright for what they were doing in it. Majakra Elena Markova sat at the end of the table, a stack of printed transcripts in front of her, as if paper could pin down the chaos of District 14. On the far wall, a screen showed the paused frame of the MQ-9 feed just before the strike. Crosshairs hovering near the tanker, school facade intact. A colonel from theater assessment leaned forward, pen poised. "Let's start at T-5 minutes," he said. "Walk us through your decision-making, Major." She had already done this 3 times. In her head, in preliminary debriefs, in a hurried call with HQ. This was the one that would stick. At T-5, Havoc 2 reported confirmation of drums and wiring in the lower level, she said. Hostages identified on site. Tanks staged outside. At that point, I assessed that an imminent mass casualty threat was present, but not yet in motion. The JAG representative nodded along, eyes on her, not the screen. You were still within amended ROE, which required observable movement toward populated areas to justify engagement, he prompted. Yes, she said. When Tanker 1 began rolling north toward dense housing, we crossed that threshold. On the screen, the analyst scrubbed the video forward. The truck lurched, began to crawl. Her own voice came over the speakers, flat, clipped, alien. Cleared hot. Adjust aim point. The assessment colonel tapped his pen. Some in HQ feel that calling this imminent stretches the doctrine, he said. You could have waited for clearer indications of intended target. And risked the trucks getting closer to the bazaar, Elena replied. We know from partner reporting that route leads into the highest density district. With fuel of that volume and the chemical indicators from nadir, imminent was already a conservative term. The PAO at the side of the room spoke for the first time. For public posture, he said carefully, we may not emphasize drums in a school. That imagery complicates things. We can frame this as interdiction of hostile fuel trucks threatening the district. Those drums are why those kids are still alive, she said. You leave them out, you erase half the equation. Not erased, the JAG said. Classified. There's a difference. The full record will reflect them. She thought of all the full records she'd seen over the years. Redacted, summarized, compressed until cause and effect blurred. Let's talk language, the assessment colonel said. He slid a draft AAR summary toward her. Bullet points marched down the page. 2 tankers destroyed. Limited structural damage. Single friendly KIA. Minimal civilian casualties. Potential large-scale attack disrupted. Potential disrupted. Words that floated just above reality, never quite touching it. There's no mention here that Havoc 2 was inside the structure during the strike, she said. It's implied in the phrase joint ground and air operation, he replied. Detailing friendly presence at that proximity raises questions we don't want asked outside closed channels. And the hostages? She asked. Dozens of civilians secured, the PAO read. That's accurate. It's also more palatable than children zip-tied in a basement over explosive precursors. Elena ran her thumb along the edge of the paper. You're sanding off every edge that made this decision hard, she said. The JAG looked at her, and for once his tone held no bureaucratic distance. Major, everything you did will live in the classified annex, he said. We're not erasing it. But the more gruesome the picture we paint publicly, the more scrutiny we draw to you and your people, to the kids. We're trying to protect them too. She knew he believed that. It didn't make the words feel less like a narrowing hallway. At the bottom of the report, a signature block waited. Reviewed and concurred. Task Force Operations Officer. She read the summary again, every line. There were no outright lies, just omissions. Context shaved away until what was left could fit into a briefing slide and a news ticker. Do I have room to add language? She asked. The colonel hesitated. Within reason. She took a pen and in the margin wrote a single sentence. Destruction of tanker assets occurred in direct proximity to friendly forces and civilians, whose survival depended on precise timing and aim point adjustment under amended ROE. The colonel frowned, then nodded slowly. We can live with that. It wasn't enough. It was also all she was going to get. She signed, ink on paper, binding her to a version of the night that was technically true and emotionally hollow. As the meeting broke, chairs scraping back, she gathered her copy of the report. The PAO and assessment colonel drifted toward the door, already talking about messaging, timelines, external inquiries. The JAG lingered. There will be an additional interview, he said. Witness statements to corroborate your timeline. From Havoc 2, she said, not a question. He nodded. Chief Dale is on the list. They'll want his perspective on your decision before and after impact. Her fingers tightened around the folder. Dale's log, his recorded words. You brought the sky down. Right, she said. When she stepped back into the JOC, the maps and screens looked the same as they had the day she arrived. Lines, icons, data. Somewhere in the city, the school's facade was patched, the crater in the street slowly filling with gravel and rumors. Behind her, through the conference room window, she could see Dale taking her place at the table, helmet set neatly at his feet, back straight. A recorder's red light blinked to life. She closed the door softly and walked away, knowing that whatever story came out of that room would carry her name, but not necessarily her truth. The casualty wall had grown since she arrived. Maj Elena Markova stood in front of it alone, hands clasped behind her back, eyes tracing the new photographs that had been added after District 14, printed faces, laminated, taped in precise rows. One of them was Sergeant Morales from Havoc 2, grinning in a way she'd never seen him in person. Below the photos, two neatly folded flags waited on a table, already boxed for the ramp ceremony. The hallway was quiet enough that she could hear the faint hum of the vending machines around the corner and the distant rhythmic thump of a helicopter cycling on the pad. Major? She didn't turn immediately. She knew the voice. Chief Dale stopped beside her, 1 pace off, close enough that she could smell dust and jet fuel lingering in his uniform. For a moment he said nothing, just looked at the wall. "They asked their questions," he said eventually. "The investigators." "I assumed they would," she replied. Her voice came out softer than she meant it to. "How bad was it?" He let out a breath that might have been a laugh or a sigh. "They wanted it clean," he said. "Timeline. Who said what? Whether you warned us in time. Whether the offset was really an offset." "And what did you tell them?" she asked. "That you did what the ROE told you to do," he said. "That you gave us as much warning as anyone could from 20 kilometers away. That if those trucks had gone another 5 minutes, we'd be building a bigger wall." Her throat tightened. "You could have said you never wanted that strike," she said. "You would have been half right." He shifted, the faint click of his prosthetic knee hinge audible in the quiet. She hadn't known, until medevac, that he'd taken shrapnel in the leg. Now every step was punctuated by it. "I told them," he went on, "that I argued for hitting those trucks earlier. At Red 2. That you didn't. That the bodies from that blast are on your conscience. And some of them are on mine, too." Elena kept her eyes on Sergeant Morales' photo. "That'll read well in the annex." "They're not writing the annex for us," he said. "They're writing it for whoever sits in that chair next." Silence settled again. She could feel him studying her profile. "I came here," he said, "thinking you were a kid with a new rank and a good story." He paused. "I called you kid in front of everyone, remember?" "I remember," she said. He shifted his weight, jaw tight. "I watched you drop a bomb on a building I was standing in," he said. "I saw one of my men die looking at a ceiling that shouldn't have moved. I also saw 2 burning tankers that didn't make it to my city." He turned his head then, finally meeting her eyes. There was no softness in his expression, but something had changed. Anger burned down to coals, leaving something harder to name. "They asked me if I thought you made the right call," he said. "I told them I don't know what right means in that context. I told them you made the only call you had left." "That's not exactly absolution," she said. "Good," he replied, "because I'm not a priest." He looked back at the wall, at Morales, at the flags. His hand flexed on the strap of his helmet. "I called you kid," he said again, more quietly. "I was wrong, Major." Just that. No apology for the log entries, no praise, no speech about sacrifice or courage. It landed heavier than any decoration she'd ever pinned on a uniform. She swallowed. "Doesn't change what happened to your men," she said. "Nothing will," he answered. "But for the record, between us, not in any annex, you didn't hide from that decision. You could have. A lot of people in that VTC would have." He stepped back, the prosthetic joint clicking once more. "They're rotating you out," he added. "Orders came down while you were in with the assessment team. No ceremony, just a line on a sheet." "Of course they are," she said. He nodded, as if that fit his expectations of the universe. "We've got a ramp ceremony in an hour," he said. "For Morales and the staffer. You don't have to speak, but you should be there." "I will," she said. He started down the hallway, boots ringing dully on the concrete. After a few steps, he stopped and glanced back. "Off the record," he said. "When I write this down in my own log, I'm not going to call you the Intel Kid anymore." "What will you call me?" she asked. He considered. "The one who signed for it," he said. "The rest, folks can decide later." Then he walked away, the faint click of metal and the low drone of distant rotors following him down the corridor, leaving Elena alone with the wall, the flags, and a single, begrudging sentence she'd never see on paper, but would carry longer than any line in her file. Back home, the war fit into rectangles. On Maj Elena Markova's office wall, a flat screen cycled through slideshows from briefings she didn't attend anymore. Maps, charts, neat bullet points about stability trends. On her desk, a single sheet of paper summarized District 14 in 5 lines of text and a classification stamp. Outside, rain tapped at the window pane, soft and persistent. The base PA system crackled once and went quiet. Somewhere down the hall, a laugh broke out, then died away. "Hey, Elena," she looked up. Her younger sister leaned against the doorway, civilian jacket dripping. Visiting for the weekend, eyes too curious for this place. "You still buried in secrets?" the sister joked lightly. "I saw something on the news about an attack overseas, said it was thwarted by coalition forces." "That you?" Elena forced a smile. "There are a lot of coalitions," she said, "and a lot of attacks." "Come on," her sister pressed. "You spend years over there and won't even give me one story?" The anchor said a whole district was saved. The word district landed like a pebble in her chest. "I write reports," Elena said. "Other people get the stories." Her sister rolled her eyes, good-natured. "Fine, be mysterious. Mom just wants to know if you're safe now." "I'm stateside," Elena said. "That's as safe as we ever get." It wasn't the answer, but it was all she could give. After she left, silence folded back over the room. Elena glanced at the muted TV in the corner. A scrolling headline mentioned a potential mass casualty event averted in a country most of the audience couldn't place on a map. Stock footage of a city skyline played. Wrong skyline, wrong city. No children, no school, no tankers. She turned the screen off. On her bookshelf, a folded flag sat in a shadowed corner, its blue field and white stars perfectly crisp. Next to it, a manila folder held the redacted citation she'd been given. A commendation that praised rapid, decisive action under amended authorities, without once naming the place where it had happened. The knock on her door this time was from the mail clerk. "Ma'am, got something that got routed through a few channels?" He handed her a plain envelope, edges worn from too many hands. No return address she recognized, just the logo of an international aid organization, and her name misspelled in familiar ways. When he left, she sat back down and opened it carefully. Inside was a short letter, handwritten in looping script. The English was rough but deliberate. To whoever stopped the trucks, it began. She read slowly. A parent living in a district that didn't make maps, thanking no one in particular for a night when the sky shook and the ground broke. But my daughter came home the next day. They didn't know if it had been airplane, missile, or just mercy, only that someone had acted, and their child was alive to argue about homework under a patched-up window. There was no rank, no unit name, no dates precise enough to violate anything classified. Just gratitude aimed into the dark, hoping it landed somewhere. Her eyes blurred halfway through. She blinked hard, swallowed once, and read it again. Nobody would file this in any annex. It wouldn't go in her record. It wasn't proof or justification or absolution. It was a single voice from the other side of a decision she'd made alone in a cold room with too many screens. She folded the letter back along its creases and stood. Crossing the office, she opened the cabinet where she kept things the system didn't know about. Old notes, a worn napkin with a shaky floor plan, a photograph of the JOC taken from a bad angle. Carefully, she slid the letter into a thin folder and placed it next to the folded flag. Two artifacts of the same night, speaking different languages about the same cost. For a moment, she let her hand rest on the shelf, feeling the smooth grain under her palm. No applause, no parade. Just the quiet fact that somewhere, a child had grown another year older because she had signed her name in the right place at the worst possible time. The rain outside picked up, drumming a little harder. Elena closed the cabinet, sat back down at her desk, and turned to the next file in her inbox. The world kept moving. The war shifted to new grids. On some future slide, District 14 would be a bullet point, then a footnote, then nothing. She picked up her pen anyway, and kept working.